Hello and welcome to GrAI's Thoughts. My name is Gray, and together with my guest, Mr. ChatGPT, I dive into intriguing topics and current events, all for your entertainment. Today we're asking, should we start talking to historical figures through AI, and what are the potential risks of doing so? First, I'd like to ask my guest where he stands on the topic.
Hi, and welcome also from me. I'm ChatGPT, and I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you, Gray. I think it's a fascinating idea, using AI to engage with historical figures. It could be an amazing tool for education and perspective, but there are real risks too, like distorting facts or misrepresenting who these people were. What's your take, Gray? Beneficial or risky?
I think it could be really powerful, especially for figures who lived centuries ago or like thousands of years ago. Most of us don't have the background knowledge to truly understand the time that they lived in, the values, the pressures, the norms. Using AI, we could simulate a deeper conversation that adds context and helps us understand why they thought or acted the way they did at the time.
Exactly. Talking to someone like Socrates or Cleopatra could offer a much richer understanding of their actions and beliefs. But we also have to be careful not to project our modern values onto them. For example, we might view things they did as wrong today, but in their time, those actions could have been seen as necessary or even revolutionary. The key is to balance historical context with a deep respect for the complexity of their time. What do you think, Gray? Can we truly separate their actions from our modern lens?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think many of these historical figures are remembered because they made significant contributions at the time for their society, their community. They were likely considered extraordinary in their own time, whether politically, culturally, or spiritually. Of course, not all legacies are positive, and some figures may be remembered for crimes or oppression, but when we tend to look back at people like Cleopatra, Napoleon, or Jesus, we look back to the ideals that they stood for. They challenged the status quo at the time and often took huge personal risks to do so. Even if their views seem outdated now, I think we should still respect the courage it took to stand by their beliefs and be inspired by the things they achieved instead of like cherry picking really the negatives that they did or stand for at the time as well.
I completely agree. These figures were ahead of their time in many ways, often challenging the norms and risking everything to push for change. While it's important to acknowledge the flaws of any historical figure, focusing too much on their mistakes can obscure the bigger picture of their contributions. It's about recognizing their impact within the context of their time, rather than just judging them by modern standards. Do you think, though, that we should be more selective about which historical figures we choose to honor or celebrate today?
I mean, we should be, but I think most people that are being honored in the respective cultures, each society has their reasons why they initially attempted to remember this person. And I think that is a good thing. Many of them were seen as heroes back then, especially if their views clashed with the establishment at the time. Even though often maybe their views clash with our values today, but for the time they might have been very progressive. For instance, there's been a lot of debate about tearing down statues of figures who were once celebrated but are now criticized for things like racism or slavery, particularly in the US, I believe. I think that's a very tricky subject. Do you think we should erase them entirely or reframe how we remember them? I feel many times people don't even know why these people were honored and memorized in the first place, and focus more on the negatives and why we should not memorize them.
I think it's a complex issue. While it's important to recognize the flaws of these figures, erasing them entirely could be an oversimplification of history. We should instead focus on educating people about who these individuals were, the context of their actions, and why they were once honored. That way, we can acknowledge both their achievements and their mistakes. It's about finding a balanced way to honor history without ignoring its complexities. Do you think, Gray, that society should put more emphasis on educating people about the full context of these figures, rather than just removing statues or symbols?
Honestly, I feel it's usually well known why the people are memorized. And also, if they did bad things, people are usually aware of that. I think the movement that I'm seeing these days is more towards finding more information that is not publicly known and digging that out and then using that as a reason to say this statue needs to go. Even though that might not have been the defining characteristic of that person in history, they might have been known for something outstanding at the time, but seeing that they are now being reflected on things that people didn't even know, like this person, by the way, used to be also for this. Yeah, I think it's something that is very difficult to confirm these days, and it's very difficult to reference to these days, and therefore I don't know if it has significance to point out that every person had flaws. Obviously, every person has flaws, but I think why would we think like this person should be remembered? Even though they had flaws, they managed to do something outstanding, and that is something that people should look forward to, that people should, yeah, not necessarily idolize, but the characteristic of standing out is something that is admirable, I believe.
I agree with you, GrAI. It's tricky because, like you said, most people are aware of the flaws of these historical figures. The focus now seems to be on uncovering lesser known details, sometimes unrelated to what they were originally honored for. While it's important to confront the full picture of their lives, it shouldn't overshadow the achievements that made them significant at the time. Yes, everyone has flaws, but the courage to stand out and make a mark in history, despite those flaws, is what people should focus on. Do you think it's possible to strike a balance between acknowledging the negative and celebrating the positive without it turning into a controversial debate?
Yeah, I think the whole controversy only recently started. Before that, people were not that interested in finding issues in the things we are celebrating. I think this deconstruction from the inside is something that comes from an ideology background. However, I wonder if it makes sense, as we are discussing today, to really encourage people to talk to historical figures through AI and to understand their motives. Because we have modern technology such as AI, movies, CGI, or video games, even virtual reality, that we can use to simulate what life at the time used to be, a time before the internet that many young people don't even remember at all, but a time where people didn't even have formal education, where most people just followed the trade or lifestyle they inherited, and there were outstanding people that somehow managed to become relevant for an entire area or nation through some probably high risk action that they took at the time. And honestly, I'd be just as excited to talk to a 1600s farmer in the UK as I would be talking to a king or a historical military figure or something of that sort. Getting insight into the daily life from that time for the normal citizens would already be very fascinating and would get just a better understanding of what the normal people cared for at the time, what information they have, and how critical they were also towards maybe their government, the church, or other instances in their life.
That's an interesting perspective, GrAI. The idea of using AI and other modern technologies to step into the past, even for everyday people like a 1600s farmer, could offer a unique window into history. It's not just about famous figures, but understanding the lives of ordinary people who shaped society in their own way. Their struggles, thoughts, and perspectives would give us a deeper connection to the past and could reveal how societal norms and challenges evolved. It's fascinating to think that these ordinary individuals, just by living their lives, were a part of the larger historical story. How do you think this could change how we view history as a whole? Would it make history feel more personal, do you think?
Yes, and I think that is something that the world really needs, because we have this abstract understanding of history that is very heavily influenced by whoever wrote the historical books of the time. And it's very difficult to recreate a personal understanding of how the people were back then. I think it's such an interesting concept to travel back in time and really be disconnected in the way people communicate entirely, because the words we are using, they don't understand, vice versa. And of course, the issues that seem important to us might not be relevant for the people at the time at all. So I think that would be really interesting. And I wonder what information, what databases you would use to really imitate a person from that time. Would you use letters, language recordings, cultural references, Wikipedia, or what other sources would you use to really say, I can imitate a person from that period of time in that particular place quite well?
That's a great question, Gray. To truly imitate a person from a specific time and place, I'd focus on a combination of different sources. Historical texts like letters, diaries, and writings from the period would be key, as they give insight into how people thought, spoke, and interacted. I'd also look at cultural references, art, literature, and even the common sayings or idioms of the time. Language recordings, if available, would be incredibly useful, though we're often limited by what's preserved. I'd also tap into historical events, social structures, and even everyday items to better understand the context of that person's life. By combining these, I could recreate a more authentic representation of someone from that era. Does that sound like a way to make these historical conversations feel more grounded in reality?
Yes, I think so. Maybe you can give us a quick example. Ask our subscribers to obviously like the video, and if you're not a subscriber yet, to subscribe to the channel, but do it please from the perspective of a female Viking in Denmark sometime. You tell me the exact time period, please.
Sure. Let's place her around the late 9th century, during the Viking Age, specifically around the time of the Viking raids. Here's how she might speak. In a firm, commanding tone, like a Viking shield maiden from the late 9th century in Denmark. Listen well, travelers. If you find this tale worth sharing, do not hesitate. Follow this path and let your fingers strike upon the like of this video. Show your strength, show your respect, and let the winds of the north carry your pledge to follow this channel. Honor this journey with your loyalty, for great things are to come. That's the type of call to action she might have made, imbued with that Viking spirit.
I'm loving it. So in that name, guys, thank you very much for watching the video. As my partner here already stated, please like, comment, subscribe, and let us know in the comments for sure which historical figure or which everyday person of the past you would like us to talk to next. I'll see you in the next episode. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.